Gaza ceasefire approaches, Gaza awaits its implementation. Streets previously marked by conflict now remain still, as anticipation builds for a potential path towards peace amid ongoing uncertainty. Join our special coverage tonight on Qnews for the latest developments in Gaza. The Gaza ceasefire and detainee exchange deal will take effect on Sunday at 8:30 a.m. Gaza local time. This came after Egypt, Qatar, and the United States mediated the agreement, which includes a 42-day truce, troop withdrawals from populated areas, aid delivery, and detainee exchanges. Hamas will release 33 Israeli detainees, while Israel will free 737 Palestinian detainees. Talks for a permanent ceasefire and further exchanges will resume during this period. Egypt has announced the success of its strengthened efforts since the beginning of the crisis in the Gaza Strip in cooperation with its regional and international partners to reach a ceasefire agreement. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has expressed its gratitude to Qatar for its ongoing and productive cooperation in facilitating the successful achievement of a ceasefire agreement. The ministry also confirmed the mediator's commitment to ensuring the agreement's implementation in 3 phases within the agreed-upon timelines. It added that the ceasefire will come into effect tomorrow, 8:30 a.m., and under the first phase, Hamas will release 33 Israeli detainees in exchange for Israel freeing over 1,890 Palestinian prisoners. In a press conference with his Nigerian counterpart, Yusuf Tugar, Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdel-Ati has announced ongoing efforts to deliver aid to Gaza through the Rafah crossing, confirming that 600 trucks will enter daily. Abdel-Ati highlighted Egypt's relentless efforts to secure the Gaza ceasefire and reaffirmed the country's ongoing support for Palestinians. He underscored the importance of a two-state solution as a means to prevent future violence, emphasizing Egypt's commitment to ensuring the successful implementation of the truce. Egypt has opened registration for doctors wishing to volunteer to treat those wounded and injured by the Israeli aggression in the Gaza Strip. The head of the Egyptian Doctors Syndicate, Osama Abdelhai, stated that this initiative is part of an effort to compile a list of required medical specialties. He explained that the syndicate is working in coordination with the Egyptian Red Crescent and the government to mobilize the necessary medical teams for Gaza's health sector. Abdelhai noted that over 2,000 doctors are ready to volunteer and enter Gaza to treat the wounded. For further analysis on the current situation in Gaza a night before the ceasefire agreement's implementation, we're joined from Cairo by Editor-in-Chief of Al Shurouk newspaper, Ahmed Eldin Hussein. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And first off, can you outline the key aspects of the ceasefire and detainee exchange agreement, including its phases and practical measures?
May peace be upon you. Greetings to you and all viewers. As you know, a ceasefire agreement was reached and announced last Wednesday, and a statement was announced by the main mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and the United States of America, regarding this agreement, which will start tomorrow, Sunday morning, and as we're all aware, and as what has been reported, it is a three-phase agreement that should end with the complete Israeli forces withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and a permanent ceasefire, but it is still not completely clear. There will be negotiation by the end of the first phase to pave the way for the Israeli forces withdrawal. A number of Palestinian detainees in the Israeli prisons will be exchanged for the Israeli hostages held by Hamas after October 7th events. The hostage exchange in exchange for the ceasefire. We are very hopeful that the operation room to be formed in Cairo, and the agreement was entered into between Palestine and Cairo and Israel, will tackle all the issues that will arise from the implementation of the ceasefire. Israel will attempt to get out of this agreement with all means possible once they get the highest number of hostages.
Yes, sir. Building on what you said, considering Israel's poor track record of fulfilling commitments, can this agreement withstand the anticipated challenges and remain sustainable?
The more pressure applied on the Israeli Prime Minister by the internal extremist officials, the agreement will be compromised. But now the burden or the visualization of the situation is what is going to be done by the mediators, Egypt and Qatar and the US and the Trump administration that will assume office on Monday. How the US will allow Israel to do whatever they want, even in Lebanon after the agreement with Hezbollah, and as Israel is violating the agreement on a daily basis. So will Israel really withdraw from Gaza and focus on the West Bank to increase the settlements as one of the conditions of the agreement provided by Trump for Netanyahu to accept the agreement is increasing the Israeli presence in the West Bank? There is a lot of details that are not announced yet. The devil lies in the details, as you are all aware of. And in this agreement, there are a lot of unclear details that we hope for the guarantors and the other mediators to interfere with.
Now, sir, moving on to the humanitarian aid, what steps will be taken to guarantee the consistent delivery of humanitarian aid to Gaza under the agreement?
According to the agreement, there will be 600 trucks entering daily to Gaza. The Rafah crossing between Palestine and Egypt will be opened, and this is what has been announced. The first point, how will the trucks reach all the Palestinian territories in the light of the Israeli forces' presence on the borders? How will the trucks go to these villages with the destroyed roads and deteriorated infrastructure? How will the aid be secured? With also the presence of the Hamas fighters, will they be officially deployed again? As per to the Ministry of Interior, the Hamas Ministry of Interior, they said they will handle the distribution of aid What will Israel do about it? These are very important questions and they have not been answered by the agreement or the details announced. And we hope that we can find answers after the operation room meeting in Cairo.
Now, sir, delving into the Israeli internal situation, how do you evaluate the Israeli public sentiment towards the detainee exchange deal and the ceasefire?
A survey was carried out after announcing the agreement that 52% of the far wing, the far right, are supporters of this agreement, and the opposition is supporting the agreement, and there is also the cabinet or the war council and the government approval of this agreement. But there is also a lot of opposition to the agreement from the far right officials, including Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who strongly opposed the agreement, and they threatened that they would resign from the government. And that's why Netanyahu will try his best to get out of this agreement, not to lose control over his government. The right wing thinks that there was an opportunity for a lasting settlement in Gaza, and this opportunity is ending now. That's why they are opposing. And so I think that any attempt to a ceasefire is more concerns to the internal affairs in Israel. There will be calls for an early election unless Netanyahu manages to secure a political window for the continuity of his government. I think they will make up any issue or a violation to continue the fight in Gaza, because the only justification for the continuation of the Netanyahu government is the fight and the combat in Gaza.
So, sir, sorry for interrupting you here, but you've mentioned Trump's administration, and from here I would like to ask you, to what extent did Trump's return to the White House influence Israel's decision to support the ceasefire agreement?
It was perceived that Trump has a tendency to Israel. He is a supporter of Israel, and he took the decision of holding the U.S. embassy in Jerusalem and settling in Syrian Golan. But there is a lot of perception regarding that the ceasefire now is a success of Trump. And it has been reported in the Israeli and US media that Trump pressured the Israeli front and imposed the ceasefire agreement, and Netanyahu has no other choice but to submit to this agreement because he could not defy Trump. But about Trump continuing to support the ceasefire agreement, and will he provide to Netanyahu and Israel a bigger present, which is more normalization with Arab states? I think those questions will be answered during the upcoming period. And will he be a reason to an Israeli strike to the nuclear weapons in Iran? These questions will be answered later on.
That was Editor-in-Chief of Al Shuruk newspaper, Ahmed Eldin Hussein. Thank you so much for joining us here on Q News and for all the information you provided us with. Israel's occupation military has continued its bombardment of the Gaza Strip a day before a ceasefire deal with Hamas was scheduled to take effect. Israeli warplanes have maintained heavy attacks since the deal was agreed, continuing to devastate the territory. Israeli tanks shelled the Zaytun neighborhood of Gaza City, and airstrikes targeted central and southern Gaza, according to residents. Medics in Gaza reported that 5 people were killed in an airstrike that struck a tent in the Mawasi area west of Qnews. Smoke was visible rising from northern Gaza as transport trucks moved tanks in southern Israel. Israeli military vehicles have begun withdrawing from Jabalia in northern Gaza in preparation for the ceasefire agreement. Despite the withdrawal, Israeli airstrikes continue across Gaza, including in Gaza City's El Nasr and El Karama neighborhoods, although no injuries have been reported. In northern Gaza, Israeli drones maintain control, firing intermittently at movement, while Israeli occupation forces have set fire to homes and ongoing bombing continues in central Gaza's El Nusayrat camp. The European Commission has stated that its mission to oversee the Rafah border crossing will send a team to Cairo next week to support the implementation of the recently agreed ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The European Union announced that it's reviewing plans to redeploy its monitoring mission at the Rafah border crossing. The draft ceasefire agreement includes provisions for the daily entry of hundreds of aid trucks into Gaza. Earlier, the European Union pledged 120 million euros in humanitarian aid to address Gaza's urgent needs. The European Union has expressed its gratitude to Egypt, Qatar, and the United States for their efforts in mediating the Gaza ceasefire negotiations. In a statement, the European Union described the ceasefire agreement as a significant achievement with positive implications for the Middle East. The European Union also called for the full and unhindered delivery of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. Hamas has stated that the release of Israeli detainees will depend on the number of Palestinian detainees Israel releases. Lists of Palestinian detainees will be shared before each exchange day as part of the agreed ceasefire terms. Hamas also stated that Israel's publication of the agreed list of detainees for the first phase of the exchange is an action specific to Israel. For further analysis on the current situation in Gaza a night before the ceasefire agreement implementation, we're joined from Ramallah by spokesperson of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, Fatah, Ahmed Fattouh. Mr. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And first off, with the ceasefire and detainee exchange agreement going into effect in less than 24 hours, can you kindly explain the main features of the agreement in terms of the number of the phases and the
Thank you for having me. First and foremost, after 15 months of brutal genocide, unprecedented crime of the century that massacred our Palestinian people for 15 months straight, killing women and children, finally the world has come to the moment of truth to face the reality that this occupation need to stop its aggression, stop its hostilities, and stop its extermination war. The deal, of course, came from the huge efforts that the Arabic Republic of Egypt and Qatar and Jordan played in order to mediate for a ceasefire deal. We deeply in gratitude for the Egyptian government for playing a major role in brokering this deal, and also thank President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the King of Jordan, Abdullah II, who played a pivotal role to firmly stop all schemes of extermination or expulsion of the Palestinian people from Gaza and from the West Bank. Of course, Saudi Arabia has played a major role as well in spearheading a diplomatic campaign in support and aiding the Palestinian people. The Arab world has been very active in helping the Palestinian people, and the Palestinian government with the leadership of President Mahmoud Abbas worked and collaborated closely with our partners in the international arena to come to this realization. which is the moment of truth to stop this war. Now, regarding the peace treaty unfortunately also leaves some concerns unanswered. There is no political horizon. There is no political solution. It has no political context. But any ceasefire is immediately needed, and it is a first step to build on in order to move forward. The stages is divided into three. We have seen only the first stage, which states that there will be a prisoner swap, about 33 from the Israeli prisoners, in exchange for around, I believe, if I'm correct, more than 1,000 or around 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. There will be an immediate entry of aid, and
yes, sir. Speaking of the entry of the aid, given Israel's history of obstructing the humanitarian aid flow, what measures are being taken to ensure the uninterrupted flow of aid trucks into Gaza as per the agreement?
Well, what has been leaked from the agreement does not specify in details how is that going to be guaranteed. But what we are confident about is the mediators will exert their pressure to guarantee that aid must enter. And I believe that Egypt has already prepared the logistics and the humanitarian aid to enter tomorrow at 6:30 GMT. And the agreement states that the mediators is going to guarantee the entry of the aid. So we hope that Israel would abide and oblige to the international law, and for once in history to be humane.
Now, shedding light on the European Union's role, what is the significance of the European Union's €120 million aid pledge for Gaza's recovery?
Well, it plays a little amount of support because Gaza is devastated. The destruction, the direct destruction is estimated to be around 20 billion. That's the direct destruction. We have to investigate more. There is indirect destruction. There is shortages in medicine, shortages in food, shortages in everything. So the 280 million is a step to begin with, and it is welcomed, of course, but we need further pressure and further involvement of the international community to put a political horizon, to put a sustainable plan which would bring forward a sustainable peace and translate the aspiration of Palestinian people for freedom, independence, and the two-state solution. Without touching these terms, without going to the key issues, this is not a solution. This is just a temporary cessation of military activities that we fear Netanyahu is planning to re-enter this war in the second phase. And there was leaks within the government of Netanyahu that says that Americans has promised Netanyahu that he could re-evoke the war in the second phase, which is raised many doubts from our side about these intentions of the deal. And of course, since the announcement of this deal, more than 120 Palestinian innocents have been killed, including 33 children. Israel does not fail to show to the world how vicious and brutal they are. This is the time that the world to face the truth. This must end now, immediately.
Mm-hmm. Now, sir, from a wider regional perspective, how can the ceasefire agreement's success contribute to impacting broader Middle East stability as the European Union suggests?
Well, what we have here from the peace is just prisoner swap and aid, but that's not all the issue. Israel must withdraw from Gaza. There's no speak about the border, the Rafah crossing. There's no speak about the Netzarim crossing. They mentioned, of course, the return of displaced citizens to the north, but many questions remain unanswered about the future of the Palestinian Gaza. The Palestinian people who have suffered this immense tragedy, this immense horror, needs to live freely and like all other people in the world. You know, what we have witnessed the last year is a tragedy that we would never forget for 100 years in the future. The children who died, the children who, Hind Rajab, Reem, the soul of the soul, these tragedies, request from the world, demand from the world to bring justice to them. Israel must stop, the war must stop now, this extermination must stop now immediately. And we ask our partners to exert, and the European Union, the Americans, the Arabs are doing their job, and they're doing a great job, to exert more pressure on Israel to stop this extermination. There is no intention, there is no goals to Israel have in this war except to kill the Palestinian people. Politically, what they want from this war. Hamas has came to all the demands they asked for. Now is the time to build the Palestinian state based on the UN resolutions, based on the Arab Peace Initiative, and to end this violence once and for all.
That was the spokesperson of the Palestinian National Liberation Movement, Fatah, Ahmed Fattouh. Thank you so much for joining us here on Qnews and for all the insights and the information you provided us with. This brings us to the end of our special coverage on Gaza, a night before the implementation of the ceasefire agreement. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.